some days beforehand, so that they were able to decide what they wished to purchase and the price they were willing to pay. The sales always took place at 11 o'clock on Tuesdays in the commercial sale room in Mincing Lane, that narrow street off Fenchurch Street, where the air is so highly charged with expert knowledge of the world's produce that it would illuminate the prosaic surroundings with brilliant flashes if it could become visible. On the morning of the sale, samples of the cacaos are on exhibit at the principal broker's. The man in the street brought into the broker's office would ask what these strange beans might be. "A new kind of almond?" he might ask, and then, on being told they were cacao, he would see nothing to choose between all the various lots, and wonder why so much fuss was made over discriminating amongst the similar and distinguishing the identical. He might even marvel a little at the expert knowledge of the buyers. Yet, frankly, the pertinent facts concerning quality known by the buyer are fewer and no more difficult to learn than the 1,001 facts a lad must have at his finger ends to pass the London matriculation. They are valued because they are inaccessible to the multitude. Only a few people have the opportunity of learning them, and their use may make or mar fortunes. The judgment of quality is, however, only one side of the art of buying. We have to add to these a knowledge of the conditions prevailing in the various markets of the world, a knowledge of stocks and probable supplies, and given this knowledge an ability to estimate their effect, together with other conditions, agricultural, political and social, on the price of the commodity. The room in which the sales are conducted is not a large one, and usually not more than 100 people, buyers, pressmen, etc., are present. Not a single cacao bean is visible, and it might be an auction sale of property for all the uninitiated could tell. The cacao is put up in lots. Usually the sales proceed quietly, and it is difficult to realize that many thousands of bags of cacao are changing hands. The buyers have perfect trust in the broker's descriptions. They know the invariable fair play of the British broker, which is a byword the world over. The machinery of the proceedings is lubricated by an easy flow of humor. Sometimes a few bags of sea-damaged cacao or of cacao sweepings are put up, and a good deal of keenness is shown by the individuals who buy this stuff. It is curious that a whole crowd of busy people will allow their time to be taken up whilst there is a spirited fight between 2 or 3 buyers for a single bag. Whilst the London auction sales are of importance as fixing the prices for the various markets and reflecting to a certain extent the position of supply and demand, only a fraction of the world's cacao changes hands at the auction sales, the greater part of it being bought privately for forward delivery. The price of cacao is liable to fluctuations like every other product. Thus, in 1907, Trinidad cacao rose to 1 shilling a pound, whilst there have been periods when it has only fetched 6 pence per pound. On April 2nd, 1918, the Food Controller fixed the prices of the finest qualities of the different varieties of raw cacao as follows: British West, Africa, Accra, 65s per hundredweight; Bahia, Cameroons, San Tome, Congo, and Grenada, 85s per hundredweight; Trinidad, Demerara, Guayaquil, Suriname, 90s per hundredweight; Ceylon, Java, and Samoa, 100s per hundredweight. The diagram on page 113 shows the average market price in the United Kingdom of some of the more important cacaos before, during, and after the war. The most striking change is the sudden rise when the government control was removed. All cacaos showed a substantial advance varying from 80 to 150% on pre-war values. Further, large advances have taken place in the early months of 1920. The call of the tropics. Many a young man, reading in some delightful book of travel, has longed to go to the tropics and see the wonders for himself. There can be no doubt that a sojourn in equatorial regions is one of the most educative of experiences. In support of this, I cannot do better than to quote Grant Allen, who regarded the tropics as the best of all universities. But above all in educational importance, I rank the advantage of seeing human nature in its primitive surroundings, far from the squalid and chilly influences of the tail end of the glacial epoch. We must forget all this formal modern life. We must break away from this cramped, cold northern world. We must find ourselves face to face at last in Pacific Isles or African forests with underlying truths of simple, naked nature. Many will recall how Charles Kingsley's longing to see the tropics was ultimately satisfied. In his book, in which he describes how he at last visited the West Indies, we read that he encountered a happy Scotchman living a quiet life in the dear little island of Monos. I looked at the natural beauty and repose, at the human vigor and happiness, and I said to myself, and said it often afterwards in the West Indies, why do not other people copy this wise Scot? Why should not many a young couple, who have education, refinement, resources in themselves, but are, happily or unhappily for them, unable to keep a brougham and go to London balls, retreat to some such paradise as this, and there are hundreds like it to be found in the West Indies, leaving behind them a false civilization, and vain desires, and useless show, and there live in simplicity and content the gentle life. The planter's life. Few who go to the tropics escape their fascination, and of those that are young, few return to colder climes. Some become overseers, others, more fortunate, own the estates they manage. It is inadvisable for the inexperienced to start on the enterprise of buying and planting an estate with less capital than £2,000 or £3,000. But once established, a cacao plantation may be looked upon as a permanent investment, which will continue to bear and give a good yield as long as it receives proper attention. In the recently published Letters of Anthony Farley, the writer tells how Farley encounters in South America an old college friend of his, who in his early days was on the high road to a brilliant political career. Here he is, a planter. He explains: "My mother was Spanish. Her brother owned this place. When he died, it came to me." "How did your uncle hold it through the various revolutions?" "Nothing simpler. He became an American citizen. When trouble threatened, he made a bee line for the United States consulate. I'm British, of course. Well, just when I had decided upon a political life, I found it necessary to come here to straighten things out. 1 month lengthened itself into a year. I grew fascinated. Here I felt a sense of immense usefulness. On the mountain side my coffee trees flourished. Down in the valley grew cacao." "I grow mine on undulations." "You needn't, you know, so long as you drain." "Yes, but draining on the flat is the devil." "Anyhow, I always liked animals. You haven't seen my pigs yet, and horses and mules need careful tending. A cable arrived one morning announcing an impending dissolution. I felt like an unwilling bridegroom called to marry an ugly bride. I invited my soul. Here, thought I to myself, are animals and foodstuffs, good, honest food at that. If I go back, it is only to fill people's bellies with political east wind. To come to the point, I decided to grow coffee and cacao. I cabled infinite regrets. The decision once made, I was as happy as a sandboy. Je suis, je reste, I said to myself, said I, nor have I ever cast one longing look behind. This is fiction, but I think it is true that very few, if any, who become planters in the tropics ever return permanently to England. The hospitality of the planters is proverbial. There must be something good and free about the planter's life to produce so many men, and so genial and generous. There is a picture